Hello, welcome to this video where I'm going to talk about the upcoming community day that features Bellsprout evolving all the way to Victreebel and is getting a new attack to learn. I felt like doing a deep dive into it and, inform all of you so you know how good Victreebel is going to be. I only did this for Great League though. This took me about 2 days, so it was a lot. I did not do this for Ultra League. And the reason why is, well, I will show you why. So the Bellsprout Community Day has a couple good bonuses during this event. And one of them, the main thing probably, is that you get triple starters for catching Pokemon. This is what makes it a pretty decent community day, but for the Pokemon itself, I think many of you already have one, whether that's regular or Shadow. So yeah, it's not really exactly a new Pokemon. You can get more Shadow of them if you want before the event, if you turn on your Super Rocket Radar and you only defeat the decoys, because they feature Shadow Bellsprout. Furthermore, if you want a Victreebel for Ultra League, you will need Excel Candy. So you could use these Mega Evolutions to gather easier Excel Candy if you really want. But again, I'll get to you why it's not exactly necessary. Now, finally, before we dig into how good Victreebel is and the bulk breakpoints and whatever, I just want to give a big shout out to, of course, PvPoke that allowed me to do all this research on the website. So yeah, let's take a look. So, first off, you may have gotten here through the post that I had on X, where I featured a very big graph trying to sum up the most important things about Victreebel. It used to run Razor Leaf as the fast attack, which is very inflexible, but takes down everything quite quickly. That's weak to grass. Now you have Magical Leaf, which also has high damage output, but has way more energy gain, and that allows you to fight a little bit back better against like flyers. But the main comparison that I want to make on why you need Victreebel or not is Venusaur. Venusaur has similar typing and a similar performance, and it has better stats. That's one of the main reasons that makes Venusaur a little bit better in most scenarios. I simped the regular and the Shadow variant, so regular Venusaur against regular Victreebel, Shadow Victreebel against Shadow Venusaur, and Venusaur has just 9 more matchups in most in Great League. So yeah, Venusaur just does a little bit better. Victreebel does have some niche to it, and of course in some restrict meta, Venusaur might be bad. So yeah, you see more recommended IV spreads and important break bulk points. We'll go deeper in that as the video goes on. So here I have the comparison of regular Victreebel against Shadow Victreebel. These are simulated with rank 1 IVs and also with Magical Leaf. You can see that Victreebel regular just has a little bit more bulk, but doesn't per se pick up particular more matchups. I think one of the most important things that you have as Shadow Victreebel is that 2 Sludge Bomb will knock out most flyers, and that allows you to win Altaria, Mandibus, and I think Mantine and Gligar you could already win. But those are one of the main features. I'm not going too deep into them specifically. Obviously, Victreebel has a little bit more bulk and speaks for itself that it can take an Ice Beam easier than Shadow does. But yeah, take a screenshot if you want to take a look into this further. They both really have their own niches. Now, what I also want to show you is the comparison of Magical Leaf versus Razor Leaf. I only did this for Shadow because Shadow is more impressive with fast attack pressure, right? So I only did this for the Shadow one with Razor Leaf. Now, if you'll take a look at how many matchups you pick in quantity, they are very equal. And I think that Razor Leaf is a little bit less consistent simply because these are simulated on even energy. But like a Shadow for Alligator, it only needs like, I believe, 1 Shadow Claw and you don't win that in the 0-1 or 0-2. So obviously it's a little bit more impressive, which helps. But I think the main niche, again, that Shadow has is picking up some flying type matchups such as Dragonite, Altaria, Mandibus, which Razor Leaf doesn't. Again, it just adds more flexibility to its moveset. Now, this one you may have already seen a little bit on the main graph, but I also compared Victreebel to Venusaur and Shadow Victreebel to Shadow Venusaur. And yes, again, Victreebel does a couple things a little bit better, has a little bit more niche, simply because Leaf Blade comes out a little bit faster and is still a very strong charge attack. But Venusaur's main niche, like Frenzy Plant, is just so good, but also having about 200 more stats in the stat distribution is just incredible on Venusaur. You can see that it picks up way more matchups as regular and Shadow, and I think one of the main things, probably like Wigglytuff, already shows the bulk of Victreebel, whereas Shadow Victreebel just gets farmed down by if you have Magical Leaf, and Shadow Venusaur actually can win the 1-2s and the 2s. So yeah, gives you an idea of how good both Pokemon are here. Alright, so now that we had this, we're going into the break and bulk points, something that most players are probably looking for the most. I already went through a recommended spread, IV spread, and this is why. I did some digging into the breakpoints against competitive meta, and you can see some here. There's not a lot that flip particular matchups. You can flip Charger Bug if you have a higher attack, and you can flip Umbreon. I think Umbreon could be a pretty consistent and decent one. Shadow Polarite is so-so. It depends on how much energy they have. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind here is that Victreebel averages around 135 attack if you have a little bit lower attack. So you kind of need like 10 to 11 attack on most Victreebel to reach the breakpoints on most of these Pokemon. Then we also have the bulk points on regular Victreebel, and one of them that's pretty important in competitive meta is Annihilate. You need a bulk point to win the 2 shields against Night/Annihilate. Azumarill also comes in handy, but you don't need a very high defense for this. 95 can be pretty high, and this is something that I cover in the recommended IV spread. However, it also depends a little bit on the IVs of the opposing Pokemon. So if they run something like a Lickitung break and bulk points Annihilate, which is usually like 15 attack, 14 defense or something, you don't hit this bulk point at all. Maybe you hit another sort of break a bulk point because of their ridiculous stats, but yeah, these are some of them. I think Licktung's also an important one. You win the 1 shields with pretty decent defense, so I do recommend about 95 defense here. And then there's also Shadow Victreebel with Magical Leaf. Now, this one is more easy to reach. As you can see, you don't need a ridiculous high attack stat for most of these matchups. There is Shadow Gligar where you need 143 attack, and again, you average, if you go for a decent attack, you get like 140. So yeah, Shadow Gligar, the 1-0 shields is so-so, but I think there's a couple other very important ones, such as Cresselia, Annihilate Zeros, Lickitung, the 2 shields, and, well, Metacham's not as relevant anymore, but it's still a good breakpoint to have. So yeah, around 140 attack will cover so many of these as well. You might even want to go for like 142, but you might miss some bulk points then. And while the bulk points there's not a lot of them, and they aren't the most important. However, Clodsire is a pretty easy one to reach. Bastiodon is a pretty easy one to reach. And Vigoroth, I think, is an important one. And Altaria is as well. Problem is, though, on Shadow Victreebel, you want pretty high attack. It just performs way better with higher attacks. So you kind of do fine with about 90-ish defense. But for Altaria and Annihilate, you need 95 defense. So kind of an annoying offset there in the Shadow form. So yeah, again, looking at these recommended IV spreads, that is why I recommend, like, you have 3 different ones that you get similar stats about: the 6-15-6, the 7-15-4, and the 8-14-4 for regular Victreebel. And then I found that 14-8-10 is among the best for Shadow Victreebel. Something that I do want to point out as well, adding on to the IV spreads and matchups that you pick up, you can win Cresselia, Registeel, Vigoroth, and Charjabug on regular Victreebel on a good stat distribution. So it's a high HP and defense combination. So it's something you might want to keep in mind as well. And the same goes for Shadow, but then you pick up Registeel on a high HP stat and also a little bit defense, so the Zap Cannon or Focus Blast does less. Because with a higher HP, you can take a few more lock-ons and you can win against Registeel as well. My conclusion for your best Victreebel is to try and cover those break and bulk points, but for Shadow, you just want higher attack. In fact, Razor Leaf performs very well with high attack as well. You don't really need Magical Leaf on Shadow Victreebel. It's just a different Pokemon, and Venusaur does better in most scenarios. Now, the final thing I want to cover for Great League Victreebel is Charge Attack Priorities that you can win, but there's not a lot of Pokemon that reach about similar attack as Victreebel. There's Dragonite, Zapdos, Magnezone, Machamp, Toxicroak, and Gramble that I covered. Some of the more, I would say these are the more common Pokemon that you may face in Go Battle League, but they're pretty uncommon. With a higher attack, you can win Charge Attack Priority against these Pokemon. And then last of all, if you have no idea what to pair your Victreebel with, you don't have a Venusaur, you're kind of new, I also have like a list of Pokemon that you can pair Victreebel with. Not all of these are always in rotation in the wild, in raids or anything, but perhaps you have some of these. Hopefully they're accessible enough for you if you were to use the Victreebel for your Go Battle League battles. So yeah, Ultra League, I didn't do much deep dive digging in here, and the reason why is because I don't think it's very good there. And I also already invested 2 days into, researching regular and Shadow Victreebel for Great League, which was a lot, and at some point a little bit tiresome. Now for Ultra League, I only drew basically the comparison of Venusaur and Victreebel again for both regular and Shadow forms, and I compared those of default IVs in Ultra League. And you can just see that Venusaur, I'll show you the table, Venusaur just performs better most of the time, just not in the 2 shields compared to Victreebel. The way you need to read this is that if you have a score of 500 on PvPoke, above 500 is where you're going to win more than you lose. And under 500 is where you lose more than you win. So you can see Venusaur only does this in the 0 shield scenario for both regular and Shadow. This is why I didn't do much more deep dive digging along with the time the time that I didn't have or want to invest into it. Again, if you do want one for Ultra League, you need Excel Candy, and I think you probably want to go for a higher stat distribution. Because most Pokemon likely faint to 2 Razor Leaf either, 2 Leaf Blade either way, except if it's something like Umbreon. So yeah, that's what I got to cover for Ultra League. If there's a lot of views and comments saying like, you know, I really wanted to grind one for Ultra League, now I don't know as much as I really wanted to. If that's the case, I'll do that for the future videos, just not for this one. I hope this one is useful for you. Hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.